So, the Rings of Power happened. And now I, like every other Tolkien fan on the face of the planet, have a couple thoughts and feelings, and I guess I'm gonna go ahead and share them. Now, if any of you have watched the videos I've released over the past 8 weeks that show my sister and I reacting to the individual episodes, then you can probably guess that I was not the biggest fan of the show.
I take issue with this. What? I hate this. Wait, what do you mean? What? No! 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 It was boring. This is so dumb, and I kind of hate it. Why do you have to ruin everything you touch? What is happening? What am I watching? What is life? Who am I?
And, yeah, definitely didn't love it, that's for sure. And I guess I'm just here to add my 2 cents on why I don't really think the show works. I'll try to keep this brief since there's already 1,000 other people who are much more talented and better spoken than me who are also going to be talking about this, but here's my own perspective anyway. First things first, you'll notice that a lot of the criticism leveled at this show, especially initially, was about how it's trying so hard to be woke. And to avoid accusations of being patently evil or any associations with various racist idiots out there, let me just say, I do not care that there are actors of color in this show. I literally do not care. All of these people are beautiful, beloved children of God who deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, and if you're out there harassing them because they happen to have a different color of skin than you do, you're just being a jerk, and please stop. I have plenty of issues with this show, but none of them are the fact that they're employing colorblind casting. Arguments could be made about accuracy and adaptation and stuff like that, but that is not what I'm here to talk about. It's so hard to even approach this topic without things getting ugly, and I'm not exactly an authority on this subject either, so we're just gonna leave it at that. The show is kind of bad. It's not because there are people of color in it. So, with that out of the way, let's dig into the reasons why I think this show is, overall, kind of a waste. I've talked a lot about adaptations on my channel, generally in regards to the X-Men, and my general attitude towards them, for those of you who aren't aware, is that if you're going to adapt a previously established work, you should do so in a way that is respectful to the source material while also creating something that is good in its own right. If that requires changing a few things, that's fine, so long as it's done in the service of still making a good story. The Lord of the Rings film trilogy is honestly, in my opinion, a very, very good adaptation. It's not perfect, certainly, but for the most part, the changes they made were made to make the story fit into the medium better, and the films unquestionably stand on their own as pieces of art. Essentially, I really don't like to approach adaptations with the attitude simply of, it's different from the book, so it sucks. Obviously, my bias is going to be my bias, and there's nothing I can really do about that, but I really try to look at the adaptation both in relation to the source material and on its own merits. And I really tried to do that here. But even with that, I still don't like the show. I could break down every aspect of the show and go through with a fine-tooth comb and point out every inaccuracy and issue within it, but that would require me to rewatch the entire thing multiple times, and that's just unnecessarily time-consuming, and I'm sure someone who's much better versed in Tolkien lore and generally better spoken than me will do that at some point. For me, I just want to list a couple of my main gripes without going too far into detail. My first issue is that the show just feels kind of manipulative and arrogant. Like, they're claiming to be showing the novel that Tolkien never wrote, and I'm just like, really? You're really going to say that about the man who wrote so much and could have written so much more had he been given the time? They go and make up all of this backstory for characters which did not exist in the source material, and for people who don't know the books but only know the movies, they're probably going to accept this as canon and assume that this is actually what happened prior to the events of The Lord of the Rings. Like, they want people to watch the movies now and be like, oh yeah, that's why Gandalf likes hobbits so much, because he was saved by one when he first came to Middle-earth. Or they're gonna see Galadriel lift up Ninja on her hand and they're gonna go, oh yeah, she melted her brother's knife to make that ring. And it all feels so icky because it's like, they're artificially adding depth to things that did not need to be made deeper. And I think it feels so particularly egregious in this situation because we're talking about the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, a man who created a world which is renowned for how much of its history we actually know. This isn't a Narnia situation where there's tons of gaps in the history and you could basically do whatever you want. There is a ton of already established lore, and the fact that you take that and then try to replace it with your own creation feels so disrespectful. And I feel like the showrunners just don't care about that. They know people are going to watch it anyway because they slapped Lord of the Rings on the title, so why bother trying to stay true to the source material? Instead, let's just make up our own story piggybacking off of someone else's world, and then we get to make a ton of money because we use the same names. And maybe I'd be fine with that if the stories they made up were actually good, but I'm sorry, there just isn't anything here that's original enough or gripping enough to really make that claim. The show just feels very pretentious and self-important and kind of exploitative. Now, that does not mean I am one of the people who thinks that this show is the epitome of all evil and that they're trying to erase Tolkien's work so that they can promote their woke agenda. No, I think that they're just trying to make money, plain and simple, and Middle-earth is a recognizable, profitable IP. And whatever becomes of the show, whatever people say about it, there is no way it is ever going to fully overshadow the works of Tolkien. Good art endures because it is good. We don't have to worry about it fading away because a big conglomerate made a mediocre show. You know what's the worst thing about the situation, though? The fact that the show isn't entirely bad. Because that's just it. There is some good here. It's very technically well made, the music is good, and I think the actors are doing their best with what they've been given. There were a few times that I sort of felt something, and a couple storylines that I was actually invested in. I was enjoying the Elrond and Durin storyline until they introduced that stupid stuff with the Mithril. I also think the actor who plays Gandalf is really good. I think he would make a great Gandalf in something that, wasn't this. But the point is, I don't think this show was doomed to only be bad. I think we could have gotten something good out of this. I explained why I don't like what the show is, so now I'm going to explain what I wish this show actually was. I wish this show had not done the compressed storylines thing that they had stuck to the original timeline, or at least closer to it. Since a good chunk of the characters are immortal / very long-lived, you could still retain most of the same actors, or at least keep most of your actors on for a season while you explore one arc, then move on to the next one. But regardless, I wish they had done that, and then that they had simply taken what we already have in the books and then expanded where there was actually room to expand. Because as thorough and detailed as Tolkien was, it's true that he still left plenty of gaps. And there are a couple times where the show does this. For example, they talk a little bit about how Elrond feels in relation to his father. That's something that makes a lot of sense. He probably would have a lot of conflicting feelings about his father, and that's something that there's plenty of room to explore without actually changing anything from the source material. A lot of what Tolkien wrote about the Second Age is very broad, so you could stick to the same outline and structure that he wrote and just fill in the details with your own creativity. That's what the show does in some areas, but in the rest they just make up new reasons and explanation for things that did not need reasons or explanations. Like, they entirely changed the circumstances of Finrod's death just so we can give Galadriel a vendetta against Sauron, making her do all these things to unwittingly bring him back into power, rather than just having Sauron infiltrate and deceive the elves and the men of Numenor like how he did in the source material. Why not just have that storyline and then expand on it? Why not explore Celebrimbor's character more, since he is the most central figure to the Forging of the Rings, rather than making him a largely forgettable side character? And this really is just a minor complaint, but they did not try at all to cast actors that looked ageless, did they? No shade against the actor, seriously, but Celebrimbor came on screen and I was like, he looks like he should be playing a hobbit, not an elf. Anyway, I digress. I could ramble on for a while about all the things that annoy me, but I wanted to keep this brief. Bottom line, the show just feels very arrogant. Rather than actually fill in the gaps that Tolkien left in his story, they decided to mash everything together and make up their own fan fiction for how the Second Age of Middle-earth happened. And aside from being so self-important, the show just isn't that interesting on its own merits. If it was completely divorced from any association with Middle-earth, I really don't think I would see it as anything more than average. I know there are a lot of people who are enjoying it, and that's great, but for me, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, just does not work. I don't know yet if I'm going to watch the next season. I think I might, just because I am morbidly curious about where they're going to take it, and apparently they promise to be more lore accurate next time, but we'll just have to see. My various hot-blooded reactions aside, I don't feel so strongly about this show that I feel you need to boycott Amazon or anything like that. As I said before, there's no way this show will ever be able to hold a candle to the actual stuff that Tolkien made, and whether it flops or it becomes the most popular show of all time, the Legendarium will always be there, unchanged, for us to enjoy. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on this. I could have gone more in depth, but who has the energy for that, really? I did want to say hello and thank you to the influx of subscribers that I suddenly got. Crazy what happens when you actually make relevant content. But yes, welcome to all of you. I'm very glad you're here, and if you're hungry for more Middle-earth content, I don't know when I'll be making more, but it will certainly happen at some point. Thank you for coming on this journey with me, disappointing as it was, and I will see you next time.